Good morning, Wall Street winners. It is Monday, September 23rd, and I'm not going to say we're in for a busy week, but we do have some key earnings coming out this week, and I'll touch upon those in a minute. Appreciate you listening today, and if you are enjoying these videos, I do release them every day, as you likely know. Please subscribe to the channel, leave me a like and a comment. So when we head into today, what we can see in the markets, in the futures, is that it's pretty much green on the screen for the U.S. indices. The NASDAQ, Dow Jones, and S&P 500 are all up. Now, it is pre-market. We're 90 minutes out from the start of trading, but it looks like we're off to a positive start in the pre-market. If we go back to the homepage, lots of news to report, and I'll just hit on some of the highlights here coming up on the Bloomberg app. China stimulus hopes rise as the Bank of China looks to cut rates and plans to have a news briefing on that. Apollo, which is a large private equity organization, is making a multi-billion-dollar investment into Intel. Qualcomm, another big chip maker, is also putting forth a bid to acquire Intel, potentially. So they're looking at that. We've got more attacks over in the Middle East. So Israel has stepped up its attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon. And then we've got, obviously, the Harris-Trump show going on right now, where Harris is gaining momentum and certainly outspending Donald Trump and the Republicans in a bid to win the election. Climate Change Conference starts this week in New York, and we have some other odds and ends going on. If we go to the Yahoo app and just take a look at the top of the screen, the one thing we'll notice is crude is up. Crude has been up higher, dropped down, and now it's back up 42 cents. It's looking like we could get close to 72 or break through the $72 a barrel price today, or at least this week. I would anticipate we'll get up to 73, 74, especially based on the ongoing turmoil over in the Middle East. We keep scrolling over and we can see the VIX is down at 16.45. I think we're going to see the VIX come down into the 15s this week, the volatility index, and that's going to be good overall for investor sentiment across the market. If we look at health and retail, it's pretty much green on the screen. Not a lot going on here that I have a great deal of interest in. The one retail stock that isn't in our list that does come up this week with earnings is AutoZone. So if we look at AZO, we can see that AutoZone is set to report tomorrow, and a pretty elevated stock price. It's due for a stock split for sure. But that stock has done relatively well over the last few years, and is one that we don't follow here, but it is having some earnings coming out this week, coming out tomorrow. Nike, which we heard about a new CEO being hired starting, I think it was October 14th, middle of October. That stock did well on Friday with that announcement. Looks like it's off a little bit this morning. It has earnings coming out in 8 days. The new CEO obviously won't affect the new earnings, but it will be interesting to see whether Nike is making a bit of a turnaround here as it heads into those earnings 8 days out. If we scroll down through transport, again, not really looking at too much there. I'm expecting CNR to drop further into the low 150s, if not into the 140s. I'm waiting for that for a buy signal and buy opportunity. We get into oil. I would expect, with crude up and everything going on in the Middle East, that we're going to have a positive day in oil today. So this might be one to watch and potentially jump in early on and catch that wave upwards, the ride upwards, as these stocks, I believe, take off throughout the day and the week this week. If we go down into tech, so tech also green, but mixed, green and red, primarily green. We've got Micron. Micron reports this week. So we're 2 days out. Wednesday, we hear from Micron. I believe Micron is an amazing buy. I was saying that last week when it was in the 80s. I think it's an incredible buy going into earnings. I don't anticipate that we're going to see an earnings miss. I think we're going to have strong revenue, strong earnings, and hopefully, if positioned well, a strong future forecast. So let's wait and see what we get out of Micron later this week. In terms of other earnings that we have, so We have AutoZone tomorrow. We have Micron on Wednesday, the 25th. We have Jefferies Financial, which we'll cover momentarily. They're coming out on Wednesday as well. Then Thursday, we have our big retailer, Costco. We've got as well CarMax coming out, which will be an interesting indication for the car market. We've got Jabil. Jabil is a large semiconductor manufacturer. They're coming out as well Thursday. And then MTN, which is Vail Resorts. This is a money-losing operation at its best. They're coming out. That's a company I would stay away from for sure, is Vail Resorts. But they're coming out Thursday as well. So we've got that. We've got some other Fed speak this week. On Tuesday, we have Michelle Bowman speaking at 6 a.m. from the Federal Reserve as the Federal Reserve Governor. We've got the Atlanta Fed President, Raphael Bostic, speaking today on Monday. And then we have but we've got a bunch of them coming out this week. It's just kind of meaningless overall. But it will add to the conversation about the rate cuts from last week. If we continue to scroll down through our list of tech stocks, if you are looking for a less risky type of place to put your money, but believe that tech is on an upward trajectory, I would look at the QQQ. This is something that I believe you will do well. I know you will do well in over time, but this is effectively a basket of stocks, a basket of tech stocks, so that you're not solely invested in one, which is obviously a lot more risky, but it also has some upside reward. This gives you a balanced basket across multiple different tech stocks, and that's a great ETF to take a look at. One of the tech stocks, though, individually, that has been a bit of a behind-the-scenes slow climber is CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike was the one that caused that major outage. Didn't seem to have any huge repercussions coming out of that, which surprised me in terms of costs and lawsuits, at least that we've heard about. It's almost at $300, back at $300. If we look at 6 months after earnings there, in this July timeframe, it dropped significantly, hitting as low as we'll call it the low two teens, the say 217, 218s. It's now climbed back up to $300. So this is making some quiet moves in the background. Might be worth keeping an eye on. The other one that is being added to the S&P 500 index, Palantir, this was a stock that we were talking about buying in the 30s, and then it got added into the S&P index, and it's just shot up since then. So on any kind of pullback, Palantir might be an interesting addition to your portfolio. I believe Palantir is up over 100% year to date. So definitely done well this year. Apple on a pullback would be interesting. I think Apple's going into a tough period of time. The next 2 quarters could be difficult for Apple, depending on how we see the consumer spending go in the economy and the outcomes of the U.S. election and tariffs being put on different things, because obviously a lot of the components that go into Apple are manufactured overseas, some of which are in China, and it could affect pricing there. CRM making a comeback as well. I think we're going to see this stock get up to the $300 range. They just had their big Salesforce conference last week. We spoke about that on Friday. Scrolling down further, just looking really for big movers in the list, and there aren't a ton of big movers. Qualcomm has dropped a little bit, both Friday and today. I think this is on those around those conversations with Intel, nothing to do with the actual performance of that organization per se, but the potential of an acquisition or merger with a company, Intel, that's not doing so well, has driven that stock price down. So that might be an interesting one to keep an eye on, see how far it actually comes down and whether that merger takes place. And if it doesn't, it should rebound. Lam Research did not so well on Friday. It was down about $16, but it is making a comeback. I am a believer in this. I think it's an amazing value in the $700 range. I definitely am an owner of Lam Research. Meta is a big mover. Look at this. Meta was a stock that just, I want to say, 3 weeks ago, we predicted would get to 550 before middle of October. It is now looking like it's going to be up in the 570s today, with its pre-earnings up about $7 or $8. BABA should start to do well at the same time, especially with the Bank of China cutting rates to try to stimulate the economy over there in China. I think we're going to see this continue to move forward based on that. Nvidia is a bit of a bargain right now in the 116 range. I think this again is going to be a $150 stock by the end of the year. Google, though, to me is a bit of a better buy because it's, in my opinion, undervalued. Google down at 164. We were suggesting this a week ago at 158 as the stock of the day and week, and telling you to hold it because it's on a recovery curve. Still recovering. I would still be buying into this at 164 or 165. This is going to get to 185 or $190 by its next set of earnings coming out in late October. And then we have banking. So banking is a sector that should do very well with the rate cuts. It will affect net interest income, but it'll also allow for, in the big bank concerns, it will allow for more investment banking and more investment banking revenue. Wealth management revenue is growing across most of these firms. And then for the regional banks on the loan side, it'll help to avoid any loans going bad. With interest rates coming down, the payments will become more affordable. Mortgage issues will become less of an issue. So I think overall, the banks and finance is a strong sector. SoFi still a favorite, even in the low $8 range. Jefferies, which we talked about, is coming out with earnings on Wednesday, so 2 days out there. All of the financials have had pretty good earnings. If you see a bit of a pullback on Jefferies today or tomorrow into the low 60s or high 50s, I would definitely be a buyer of that going into the earnings for Jefferies. And then you've got Morgan Stanley. It's up at 102. I think it'll get up to 104, 105 by earnings in October. And then Goldman. Goldman pulled back a little bit on Friday. I bought some Goldman. I think this stock is another one that's going to be in the 520 to 550 range when it gets to earnings in October. It could really take off on earnings if it doesn't take off into earnings. So if it doesn't appreciate and increase in value into earnings, I think at earnings, when they come out to be positive, it will do very, very well. TD Bank's also been climbing slowly in the background, as has Charles Schwab. Two others to consider and take a look at. And that's really where we are today on September 23rd. So I wish you all the best with your trades today. If you're liking these videos, please subscribe to the channel, leave me a like and a comment.